Good afternoon. My name is Brooking, and I'm the Director of Sport at the University of Cambridge. The Tokyo Olympics seems a while ago now, but I'm delighted to be talking with two current university students, Louise Shanahan on the right and Imogen who've given up their precious time to be here and to share their quite different stories and experiences with us. If I can just do a little bit of housekeeping, we are going to be doing a series of kind of questions, and Louise and Imogen are going to answer as best they can. But there is an opportunity for you to ask questions as well, and we're going to gather those together during the talk, and we'll go through them at the end. So you do that by posting them on the chat on the screen, if that's okay, and I will pick out the ones that I think are appropriate. So the Olympics, there were, of course, at least 10 Cambridge alumni, coaches and students performing in Tokyo, including, of course, the gold medalist in the women's cycling road race, Anna Kieshofer. And a lot of people also involved behind the scenes back in this country working for governing bodies and so on. But I think, and I might be wrong, only these two are the only returning current student athletes, hence the privilege for having them here. So Imogen and Louise, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, perhaps we could start pre-Cambridge, pre-university. Tell us a little bit about your kind of childhood, if there was aspirations or ambitions, either academically or sporting, neither or both. Let's start with Louise.
Yeah, so I think in a way I was almost born and bred to run. I went to my first race when I was 6 days old. I don't think my mum was super keen about it. It was an inter-varsity cross-country race, but I think my dad was proud of me and wanted to bring me along. I probably didn't find the sport myself until I was about 9 years old, just through a school sports fun day. Probably because I wasn't very good at other sports. So I kind of found one that I wasn't completely rubbish at and kind of took off with it. But I played loads of sports when I was a kid. I did a bit of hockey, I did a bit of sailing, some Irish dancing. And I guess it was probably only when I was kind of 13, 14 that I really said, wow, I like athletics. And yeah, for as long as I can remember, my dream has been to go to the Olympics. I think it's kind of been the thing in the back of my head for every training session since then. So yeah, it's kind of really been the way I've wanted to go. But that's definitely not the only way to do it. I think you're kind of the polar opposite, Imogen.
Yeah, well, I think we have some similarities. I did a lot of sport growing up, but I did a lot of everything else. I kind of tried a bit of everything, went to almost every single club. My parents were incredibly patient, driving me to who knows what, whether it was a swimming lesson or a music lesson or an art after-school club, taking me to all sorts of things. And I was interested in everything. But I would never commit to a sport or to one thing. And as I got a little bit older, I never really considered myself a sporty person. I was a person who did sports because I was quite academic and I excelled academically, and I grew up in Cambridge as well. So I kind of knew that I wanted to go to the university from quite a young age as well. And so in my head, for some reason, I didn't think that I could do both. I was either academic or I was sporty, and I went very much down the academic route. And so especially by the time I got to secondary school and a little bit older, sports definitely took a back seat. Actually, by the time I arrived at Cambridge, I hadn't really done any sport for a couple of years, despite the fact I'd done all sorts when I was younger and really enjoyed it.
Right, so two quite different sort of backgrounds in that respect, but you end up in the same place.
Yeah, that's true.
You actually end up in the same college. So
Yeah.
how did that come about for you as individuals?
Well, I guess so. I finished my undergraduate. I did my undergraduate in University College Cork and started looking at PhDs. And I guess without even thinking about athletics, I was looking at what PhD group and what supervisor best suit me. And it turned out that that was in Cambridge. So I kind of decided I was coming to Cambridge to do the PhD and then had to work out where to live. And kind of coming from outside the UK, I wasn't that familiar with the Cambridge system, didn't know anything about colleges or anything like that. So I kind of thought, okay, well, what do I do here? Well, you Google it. So I Googled it, and I Googled what's the best college in Cambridge. And the thing that comes up is Trinity College is top of whatever. So I said, well, that's grand, I'll put Trinity down. And I did, and didn't give it another thought until I was here. So I think maybe you might have planned it slightly more, but...
I mean, I think because I grew up in Cambridge, I had a little bit more opportunity to sort of see the university on a different level. You know, I looked around multiple colleges on their open days and things like that. And I was lucky enough to go on some of the outreach things as well. So I think the thing that really swung it for me was I went to a sort of taster lecture day at Trinity that they put on for sixth formers. And afterwards, the students who showed us around took us back to their room in Great Court, which is, very splendid, beautiful grass, massive fountain, chapel and all that, very impressive, and told us that Trinity gives small amounts of money to societies that you wish to form, and this person and some of their friends and some people from other years had decided to make a cheese society, so they would buy cheese and
cheese,
yes,
right.
with some funding and eat the cheese and hang out, and I thought that was a really lovely way to spend time at a college, and Trinity I think has suited me really well. And although I really valued the academics, actually the extracurricular stuff is what really kind of has been so valuable, because I wouldn't have started rowing otherwise.
We'll come on to how you started rowing in a minute, but just talk a bit more generally about the extracurricular and your kind of colleagues that you bump across at Trinity and in your sports and in your academic subjects. You rate it as important, but people might say, well, you would because you're very good at what you do. What about, how do you think other people perceive it? And what's the value of doing something, even if it's not at your level that you're at?
I think it's so important. I'm so much more organised. Once I started rowing, it's the old adage, isn't it? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. And I think whether it's sport or choir or a different extracurricular, like the plethora of societies that you have at Cambridge, having something else forces you to actually figure out what's important and prioritise.
Oh, completely. So I took 2 weeks off from running when I came back from Tokyo, and I was so unproductive. I thought, time to catch up, been out of the lab for the summer, disaster. I got nothing done. It was only when I went back kind of training and had a bit more structure to my time that I actually started to really be productive. So I think it's kind of thing, yes, it can be kind of tough to fit things in at times. I definitely find myself running from one to the other occasionally. But it's the kind of thing that if you really want to do it, you can make time for it. I don't know if you find this, but
absolutely.
Yeah, I just find that I want to do both, so I make time for both, and that really works for me.
Yeah, you make time for something that you think is valuable.
Yeah.
And I think it's the beauty of university, and Cambridge has so many options. If you find your degree is valuable and something else that's valuable, being able to prioritise that and make time for both, just being a rower and being in a high performance environment has already made me a better doctor, because I've got better communication skills, I've got better team working skills, and being a doctor and a medical student makes me a better rower because I understand the muscles and I understand the physiology behind it. It all feeds into everything. Yeah. It's not one or the other, which is something that I've definitely learnt.
And when people talk to you about that kind of thing, your peers more than people like me, do you get a sense that they think, how do they do it, or do they think it's normal? Or do they look at themselves and think, well, I could never do that? And it doesn't matter what level you're doing at, does it? But it's about, can you do something else up to get you away from the books for a bit of fresh air, a bit of heads up, a bit of social interaction? Do people get that, do you think?
I think so. There's definitely, when you tell people about, oh, well, I've just been for a run, or, oh, I've actually done a couple sessions this morning before I, came into the lectures or came into the seminar, sometimes you're met with a bit of a wide-eyed look. Yeah. But I think once you're doing it, it doesn't feel so insurmountable.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that, if you try to do it and you manage to do it, it's, you love it and you make the time for it. I definitely found kind of growing up when I was kind of 14, 15, going into the equivalent of kind of A-levels, they were saying, oh yeah, it's great that you've managed to keep the running going up until now, but you won't be able to keep it going this year. And I keep it going for another year. And then I was in university and they were saying, oh yeah, no, A-levels is one thing, but the undergraduate, it's not going to happen, and kind of managing to keep it up. And they definitely said I wasn't going to be able to do it with the PhD. I think the PhD actually is probably a little easier than the undergraduate in terms of multitasking things for anyone who wants to try it. But I definitely think that kind of people can be, because they haven't tried to do it themselves, kind of a little closed off in terms of oh yeah, well, you definitely won't be able to do it at the next level. But I think, give it a go, and worst case scenario, you're a little tight in time and you end up having to kind of pull back from one or the other, whatever it is. But it definitely is possible. I think just kind of more people are kind of closed off to it and don't give it a go. But yeah, if you love it, you're going to do it. So.
Yeah. And I think sometimes there's a bit of a stereotype at Cambridge. you know, from the outside looking in, it can be seen as academics.
Yeah.
And I think it's only once you start kind of branching out that you realise that it's so much more than that. And that's, you know, so valuable, really. But yeah, it's only when you start doing it that you realise.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go back a little bit again. Who are the kind of key influences that have got you to where you are? You mentioned going to your first race at the age of 6. I presume you weren't running in that, but maybe somebody else was, so that was important.
So my father was an international athlete, and he was actually the university coach at the time, so he was bringing me along to the local cross-country race. But yeah, I think my dad has been a huge inspiration for me, and he's kind of always said, you know, you can do both, you can do it, you know, just keep working at it and things. Especially kind of during the tough years, because you always have tough years with sport. So he has been a huge support for me. And then I guess since I've arrived in Cambridge, I'm now coached by Phil O'Dell, the university cross-country coach. I think we would say we had a rocky start. I'm more of a speed athlete, and he's definitely more in the endurance. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, but I mean, just look at what's happened in the last 2 years. It's worked out so well. I'm also really lucky that I get quite a bit of support from UCAP. So that's really helpful kind of in the gym with strength and conditioning. They're just kind of even a friendly face after a long day of work when some experiment hasn't worked. It's really nice kind of, I feel like they genuinely care about me.
Just to explain a bit to people that are listening who might not be aware of UCAP, which stands for University of Cambridge Athletic Performance Programme.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So it's, I guess, the like elite sports scholarship in Cambridge. So what they do basically is they provide services to the athletes. So we're talking about kind of strength and conditioning, lifestyle support, physiotherapy, psychology, nutrition. So a huge range of supports. And to be honest, it has been the reason why I've been able to keep going for the last year. Kind of with COVID, it was a bit of a disaster with gyms shut and things like that. And I was really lucky to have gym access, to have track access, kind of to be able to keep things going when the world was falling apart. So yeah, 100% I have UCAP to thank for my last 2 years in Cambridge.
Okay.
Did you know about it before you applied?
No.
Wow.
So I actually accepted my PhD in Cambridge, accepting that would be the end of athletics. And it was only when I arrived here, Fiona Bunn, one of the cross-country runners, said that, you know, oh, you should apply for this, you know, it'll get you into the gym. And I thought, oh, free gym membership, sure, that's great. And honestly, I kind of thought it was the end of athletics when I came to Cambridge, and little did I know it was really only the start. So yes, I think I fell into the trap basically of seeing Cambridge as academics and that sport wouldn't work with it. So it really worked for me, but I don't know what, you have a completely different sports structure over here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't start rowing until Cambridge. It happened in Freshers' Week of my first year. There's boaty cocktails at Trinity. The boat club's called First and Third Trinity Boat Club. And the deal was you sign up for a taster session for rowing and you get some vouchers for 2 free drinks. And in Freshers' Week, obviously, this is a fantastic deal. So I put my name down, no intention of going to the session, got my 2 free drinks and went away. And then the Saturday rolled around when the time came for me to go to my taster session. And I nearly didn't go, but I felt bad because I'd got the 2 free drinks. So I sort of chased them down, made my way to the boathouse, got into a coastal 4, and someone said, oh, you're picking this up really quickly. And I thought, great, and signed my name down for the next session, basically. And it sort of went from there. My novice coaches, the lower boats captains, they're usually second years, so have 1 year of rowing experience. And I'm sure I was an absolute nightmare because I kept emailing asking for more sessions. And they've probably got plenty to organise already. At Trinity, there's easily 100 novices plus each year that go through learning to row. So for me to keep being like, hello, please can I have some more sessions? I'm really enjoying this. Was sometimes a bit annoying. But yeah, First and Third is where I got my start. And Neil Talbot, one of the alumni coaches, really instilled a level of enthusiasm, which was just so fantastic, enabling me to kind of do a couple of extra sessions and get that bit more coaching. And that kind of paved my way to the development squad of what was Cambridge University Women's Boat Club and is now CUBC. And kind of from my second year, trialled with the university, and Rob Baker has been absolutely instrumental in making me the athlete that I am today, taking me from a fairly immature, very enthusiastic 19-year-old to someone who is winning under-23 worlds a few years later.
Yeah, so you actually became the world under-23
champion in the lightweight single.
Having rowed for
3 years?
3 years.
4 years?
That's
I don't know
hard to
why I
remember.
bothered
That's
for
quite
what, 15 years. Clearly I was doing it wrong.
Yeah.
But that's interesting, two very different kind of stories. And as both of you not really coming to Cambridge to expect what you've achieved, this is, let alone the classroom stuff, which we probably won't get much time to talk about today, but that's a different session maybe sometime, yeah. Okay, so some of the things that, let's talk a bit about actually getting to Tokyo, because you again took quite different routes. So Louise, you were kind of, first of all, discovered you could do some athletics while you're at Cambridge, that's the first thing, but then you actually discovered you could do quite a lot. And it was never really in your agenda. I remember when we talked to Tristan first off, when you got here, Paris was the target, Paris 2024, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. What happened to get that acceleration, if you like?
Yeah, so for the 7 years before I arrived in Cambridge, I saw little to no improvement in athletics. So I went from being a European youth champion to not PBing for nearly 7 years. So when I arrived in Cambridge, things weren't looking great. And honestly, yes, on my application for UCAP, it said I was aiming for Paris 2024. I wanted that to be true, but it was probably wishful thinking at that point. And yeah, just since I've arrived in Cambridge, everything that could have gone well went well. So I think like back in January even, I was not thinking about qualifying for the Olympics. I was really hoping I might get my first Irish senior vest. It was something I'd wanted for so long, and I kind of felt like if I could tick that box, at least I'd have salvaged something from my athletics career. And yeah, just the way it worked out, I guess having the training through the winter with the lockdowns, and it was really consistent. In February, I had a breakthrough race on the indoor season. And I guess from that, I kind of thought, okay, well, if I can make that breakthrough race kind of my consistent level rather than just a once-off, maybe Tokyo might be on the cards. So I had a really good block of training coming into the outdoors. But there's a new qualification system for athletics, so it's all ranking based. And to be honest, none of us really knew how it worked. It's the first time they used it. So it must have been the start of June when I turned to Dad and Phil and I said, look, it's a small shot, maybe 10%, 15% maybe at best, but there is a chance that I could qualify for the Olympics. But I do need to I need to go around Europe and go to all these races and collect these ranking points. And we sat down and we talked about it, and at the end of the day, it was the Olympics, so I kind of felt like I had to go for it. So yeah, fast forward 23 days later, I won my first national senior title. I had far too many COVID tests, just bouncing around different countries in Europe. And yeah, I somehow managed to qualify. So I think 3 days before the ranking closed was the first time I moved into an Olympic qualification position. And thankfully, when it closed, I was still there.
Wow.
So honestly, so not planned, last minute, I think polar opposite kind of to the preparation that you would have had.
I mean,
when we talked earlier, you touched on, because this rings a bell with Anna Kiesenhofer, spreadsheets and working out what was possible, what wasn't possible.
Oh yeah, so because of this ranking system, and because, well, I am a physicist, so I like data, I basically had an Excel spreadsheet which had all the calculations of kind of the points, all the athletes around me's points, and I think that's probably why I realized that, okay, you know what, like I've 1 or 2 races which are kind of like qualification worthy, you need 5. Which was why I kind of said, look, if I can replicate this, I can actually qualify. And I don't think many people believe me, or I think my dad said he could see how it was possible, but it was extremely unlikely, and I think he was being kind putting it that way. But yeah, I did have a giant Excel sheet for calculating whether I could qualify, and I don't think I would have qualified without my giant Excel sheet.
Brilliant.
So.
Brilliant, very Cambridge, very excellent.
I mean, it's just amazing, I think, the way that you were taking that opportunity and the fact that you saw it in the first place and then just went and followed it. Yeah, that was awesome. When you told me the story for the first time, my jaw was on the ground because it was quite different. I think for me, it kind of been coming a little bit. This was back in 2018. I'm a lightweight rower, and there aren't that many lightweight seats at the Olympics. In fact, now there are 2 seats for the women and 2 seats for the men, and 1 event. So it's the lightweight women's double scull and the lightweight men's double scull. And back in 2018, there was lots of gossip kind of circulating that the lightweights were going to be cut from the Olympic Games for a variety of very boring reasons. But it was possible that Tokyo 2020 was going to be the last Olympics with lightweight rowing in it. And as a lightweight rower, that was obviously not necessarily what I wanted to hear, especially when I was kind of just finding the improvements. I'd just come back from my first under-23 championships the previous year, having come 5th in the quad, and that was my first taste of international racing, and thinking, oh, I can do better than this. I could be quite good. And the 2017-2018 season, we got to the final trials for the seniors and the under-23s, and I came 3rd in the country, which was way better than I was expecting to do. I'd had very little time in the single, which was the boat that was being raced at the championships, at the final trials. And I was very surprised to come where I did. And at that point, Rob kind of said to me, if you're going to go for it, now's the time. And at that point, I was kind of halfway through my 4th year of medical school, in placements, back doing the boat race, sculling, trying to get to under-23s that summer, kind of juggling all of it, and doing placements and also going full-time as an athlete wouldn't work. The National Training Centre is outside of Reading, and placements are in Cambridge. So from Rob going, if you want to do this, I think you need to. It was a couple of months, but I talked to the clinical school. I kind of put forward my case of, this is where I'm at. I really want to go to the Olympics. I might be able to do it. Can I have 2 years off? And they were fantastic. And they gave me the 2 years off, which, because of the pandemic, became 3. But it meant that I was able to train full time. I did a part-time master's in the interim to kind of keep my brain ticking over, so that I still had that balance of study and training, which is really important to me. But yeah, taking the plunge to intermit and take that time out meant that I was in the right place to qualify the boat and then be selected.
Because that's the thing, when we said you qualify the boat, you don't necessarily qualify yourself.
The qualification event, unlike, it's not a ranking system, I suppose. For rowing, the major qualification event is the World Championships the year before. And different boat classes qualify a different number, but for the lightweight women's double scull, it was top 7 at the 2019 World Championships. So you had to come in the A final, which is 6 boats, or win the B final for 7th place. And we got a bronze medal at that World Championships, and so qualified the boat. But it didn't necessarily mean that I would be the one sitting in that boat the year after or 2 years after when it was in Tokyo. So I had to keep training through the pandemic, through the lockdown, to make sure that I was still in the position to be reselected with my doubles partner.
Yeah, and bingo. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the main event, Tokyo. Impressions? I mean, obviously quite a different experience to what people would say different other Olympics, but then you'd never been to an Olympics before either. So obviously disappointing that the home crowd, families and so on wouldn't have been there. So in that respect, obviously it was different in terms of its environment. And I guess the degree to which athletes mixed was probably not quite the same as before. But what are your reflections coming back, Louise? You know, as you haven't got a direct comparator, and it was probably all a bit of a whirlwind for you as well. But
so I think it happened so quickly for me and I don't know if you found this, but I found that kind of the people who helped me get there weren't necessarily there. So it kind of happened, and it happened to me, but it doesn't feel like it happened to the people around me. And I've kind of landed back in life, and I'm like, oh, you know what I did this summer? But no one else seems to kind of have experienced it with me, which is a bit weird. But yeah, I mean, I think I had a little chat with myself going out there, because I think you have to remember about the Olympics is that people have very different ideas of successes. So there will be people who will get a silver medal and who will be absolutely gutted, or someone who's, I don't know, wins 6 golds instead of 7. So there will be people like that. But to be honest, to have gone from at the start of the year, you know, hoping for my first Irish senior vest, to qualifying for the Olympics, which kind of it was my childhood dream, and I kind of had already succeeded at the point I went out there, and I think it was quite important for me that I kind of made it a positive experience, because I definitely could have gone out there and been like, oh, well, you know, you didn't medal, now it's a disaster, now, you know, and made it a negative experience. So for me, I think it was really important to kind of look at where I was, what I wanted. I had completely surpassed that, and kind of enjoy the experience. So I absolutely loved the Olympics. I think you probably expected to go there and probably had a bit more thought, so maybe your experience was a little different.
Yeah, well, I think since the 2019 World Championships where we qualified the boat, that was probably the first time where I was like, okay, this is, definitely a reality, a very possible reality. I've been in the boat and been in a position to qualify once now, so maybe I can do it again. I mean, being in Tokyo was incredible. And obviously it probably wasn't the same as a normal Olympics. We weren't allowed out the village, we weren't allowed to go sightseeing. None of our friends and family were there. Everyone was wearing masks. There were daily COVID tests. But ultimately, all the athletes that are there want to be there to be racing. And actually, the fact that Tokyo and Japan were able to put that on in such amazing fashion was just, like, I will forever be grateful for being able to be there and having that experience, because it was just amazing. I mean, the athlete village with all the flags on all of the buildings, it's like a tiny city just full of people who are at the top of their athletic game, from all sorts of different nationalities. I learned a bunch of different flags that I didn't know before.
I've never seen so much food as the food hall.
The food hall was amazing.
Friends of mine that have been there, worked there, have been there and said, always talk about the food hall.
Yeah.
Not partly for the sheer quantity, size and volume, but also just people sitting next to people. Again, maybe that was different this time, but you would never have, you see the basketballers walk in, it's obvious what they are, that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, you play guess the sport, right? With people walking past, if they're really tall, is it volleyball or is it basketball? It's hard to tell, or trying to spot the swimmers and then gymnasts. Yeah, I mean, it's such a vibrant atmosphere. It probably is different to a normal games because of the restrictions based on how many athletes could be in the village, and you weren't allowed in until 5 days before your event, and you had to leave 2 days after. So there were restrictions, but actually, I think a lot of it was an amazing atmosphere because we were in race mode. We were in a different time zone. It was very much the Olympic bubble. I wasn't really aware of what was going on at home other than the well-wishers, friends and family who weren't able to be there.
Yeah. Touch briefly on your actual event, because it was extraordinary. The world's best time in the semi-final for that event, only to be beaten, minutes later, I guess, was it, by the Italians. So, for a moment, there it was, and then it wasn't. And then an extraordinary race in the final. Yeah. How did you feel after all that? It's a terrible question to ask, I know.
No, I mean, I actually think it's really important to talk about, and specifically for those measures of success, actually.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I really wanted a medal and I really wanted to win, and I thought we were capable of winning as well. But actually, thinking back to that race, we did everything we set out to do. We didn't make any mistakes. We stuck to our race plan. We'd set a world best time. We'd gone faster than any lightweight double had gone until 10 minutes later when a couple of other crews did the same. Any combination of the 6 crews in that final could have been on the podium. And I think sometimes when you get to that high level, it's really just who places those cards in the right order on the day, when it's such small margins. And, I might feel a little bit different if I was sitting here with a medal, but I was about that far away. I was really proud of what we did, actually, and the experience was amazing. And me and my doubles partner came home and raced Henley Royal Regatta a couple of weeks later, which was just fantastic because, in stark contrast to Tokyo, there was as many spectators as you could want, and they're right next to the river, and the atmosphere there was so nice, and it felt like kind of being able to come home and kind of give people the performance that they weren't able to see out in Tokyo.
Yeah. Brilliant. Right, just finally, because I'm conscious of time a little bit, so we've got quite a lot of questions flooding in, so that's good as well. But we can't stop there until we say, right, what next? So Louise, what's next? Presumably, you had an ambition for Paris. I presume you've still got that.
I mean, as I said to Tristan in that first application, the goal was Paris 2024, so I think we'll stick with that. There are a couple of kind of championships in between now and then, Europeans, Worlds. So hopefully I can kind of establish myself and maybe be more prepared going into the next championships. A little more planned, but yeah, no, Paris 2024 is the goal.
And that fits with your PhD scheduling?
Yeah, so I've got 2 years left to my PhD now. So I'm going to do the PhD for 2 more years, and that'll give me, somewhere between 6 and 9 months to qualify for Paris after I finish.
But you'll have a longer run in, as you say now, because
hopefully
it won't have to be done in 6 weeks or whatever it was this time.
Yeah, I had 3 weeks this time, so Paris is definitely going to be an improvement.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to be in Paris. With the pandemic, Tokyo wasn't the last one. with lightweight rowing.
So that's changed because it was at one stage.
Yes, exactly. So Paris is probably the last one now with lightweight rowing in it. So that's very clearly in my sights. I think similar to Louise, I've got a couple of years left of my placements of medical school. And then, I want to make sure that hopefully I get selected again, hopefully qualify the boat again, and then hopefully get selected for the Games in 2024.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's just see what questions we've got here, if I can read them. It's difficult. Louise, the University of Cambridge performance programme sounds excellent. Can you tell us a bit more about it and how it helped you? We've kind of answered that, but perhaps we could just say that's actually something that's funded, isn't it, or has been funded so far by an alumnus, Mark Hansen, who was at Girton in, I think, '85. And it's his generosity that's enabled us, together to kind of put a programme like that on.
Yeah, and actually, I think the programme has been even more special in the last year because of COVID. So I wouldn't have had access to the gym or the track or anything without the support from UCAP. But also what was really nice was for the first time ever, I actually met the other UCAP athletes because we were all in the gym together. So actually kind of like that bonding between, learning about different sports. I've learned so much about powerlifting in the last year. I didn't know anything about it before. So actually it's a really, really good community. And I just, hands down, the success I've had in Cambridge, there are a number of factors, but UCAP has been one of them, and I would not have qualified for the Olympics this summer if it wasn't for their support. So I am so grateful.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. Imogen, Louise, so perhaps this one's for Imogen. If you were to encourage the university to make one change to support you and the other students to participate more in sport or extracurricular activities, what would it be?
Oh, that's if I were in charge of the university. If you were in charge of the
university, put yourself there. How hard can it be?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I think they do a lot for the sports already. I think sometimes from the outside, people just don't see it as much because Cambridge is such an academic powerhouse. I believe it's, the Cambridge and Oxford collegiate systems are the biggest cohorts of people learning to row from scratch, I think, in the world, I want to say. And I know that's the same for plenty of other things. The Cam Unisport does a lot, to be honest. I think sometimes it's about changing and challenging perceptions. Because, as we've said, some people go, you definitely can't do that. And it's very black and white, and actually a little bit more leniency to go, let's give it a go and see how it works, whether that's from a supervisor's perspective or a student's perspective. Actually giving it a go and seeing what happens, I think, is actually really valuable.
Yeah, okay. Thanks very much indeed. Technical question for you here, beyond my knowledge. Imogen, do you ever train or race against the open weights in the national squad?
Yeah.
I presume from a boatie there.
Yeah, no, that is very technical. Yeah, no, definitely. The lightweight squad in British rowing is quite small because there's just 2 seats for the women and 2 seats for the men. It carries far fewer athletes, and actually it's really important to get racing experience side by side with other people and kind of to see how you stack up. So what we often do is all the boats will do the same pieces on a Saturday. And we'll rank them all out of PGMT, the percentage of gold medal time.
Right.
So you can kind of see relatively, even if they're in a different boat class or if they're open weights rather than lightweights, you can kind of see where you stack up. And it's a really good way of kind of assessing whether you're improving, whether you're beating people that were beating you, or whether you're actually getting really close to the world best times and really close to the gold medal times.
Yeah, okay. Another question here. Imogen, you were one of the prize winners of the Hawks and Ospreys Charitable Trust. So a question for you is, how did the award help you on your path to the Olympics? So what we should flag up is there's a number of awards, aren't there, across Cambridge. The UCAP is very much a service-driven one, and there's Hawks and Ospreys that actually give sort of funding, don't they, as well?
Yes.
And another one called Eric Evans, which I think you know about, Louise. So,
and then all the colleges,
and the colleges as well have various pots you can dip into. Probably one of the challenges is there's such a plethora out there that it's about how do you find the one that's going to work for you. But go on, tell us about Hawks Ospreys as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, with any sport, there is financial outlay, especially when you're starting out. There can be a lot of barriers to actually kind of getting that momentum, whether that's sort of getting to the races or taking the train to training and back, preparing the right food, buying some supplements, buying the kit that you need to keep you warm. That's definitely what I use the Hawks and Osprey funding for. And I was always extremely grateful to receive that, especially when I was just starting out. I'm very lucky to be funded through lottery funding now, which has enabled me to kind of live as a full-time athlete for the last few years. But that was how I got my start, the Hawks and Ospreys.
Right, okay. Got a couple of interesting ones here, so let me just make sure I read them right for starters. For both Imogen and Louise, is there a sport that you would love to try but haven't already?
Okay, so I can say...
So now you've had experience of seeing other athletes in the gym. What do you reckon?
So hands down, when I came back from the Olympics, because Ireland had quite a lot of success at rowing as well, so I wanted to try rowing. So in my 2-week break, Churchill Boat Club took me out rowing. So I'm not linked up with Trinity's Boat Club, but I knew a few people in Churchill's, and they took me out. So I went sculling, and I did not fall in. I really wanted to try rowing and kind of had put it off because I was like, if you get injured trying to row, Tristan in the gym will kill you, Phil will kill you. So rowing was the sport for me, and thankfully I got to try it out a few weeks ago. So hopefully do a little more of it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I mostly row. I love cycling. I love weightlifting. I'm a reluctant runner. I'm afraid.
I'll take you out.
At this point, I am very lucky to be fit and have done high performance sport for a while, and so it's just fun trying out different sports. I went climbing for the first time in years a couple of weeks ago, and loved it. Just the variety is what I really like.
There seems a bit of crossover often rowing to cycling, doesn't it? Has been done. So I guess it's the big engine and the commitment and everything. So there you go. Who knows? Never say never, but you stay where you are for the moment, I suggest. Right, here's a slightly random one. So who would be more likely to qualify for Paris at the other person's sport? Louise at the double sculls or Imogen at running the 800 metres?
I think you'd make quite a good lightweight rower.
Pick the right partner, I think, is the key there.
Yeah, if you partner for me, then I think we can do that.
And
I'm not a very good runner.
Pacemaker for Imogen. It's a deal. There's a whole new thing going on here. Okay, that's probably most of the questions. Let me just check I haven't missed anything. That looks most of them. That's fine. We've talked about UCAP. Yeah, we have another question about that. So that's pretty good. So I think it just really remains for me to kind of wrap it up. Is there anything that you haven't said that you want to get across? Anything that we should have talked about? We haven't touched on your academic subjects very much. That's because I know little about medicine other than a lot of injuries and nothing at all about quantum physics or whatever it is you do. Do you just want to we've got a couple of minutes, literally. So let's just have a moment and just tell us what a typical day in the life of Louise looks like, and then we'll do a typical day in the life of Imogen when you're in full academic and sport mode.
Okay, so I'm doing a PhD in quantum physics, but it's kind of like biophysics. So I'm putting very small diamonds inside cancer cells and trying to measure temperature. So I guess my typical day, I'll wake up and usually I'll run first thing in the morning. So one of the things I really like about sports is no matter how badly your day has gone, when you go to sleep at night, you can be like, okay, well, I achieved something, even if it is kind of 4 miles easy in the morning. So the first thing I'll do is go for a run. And then I'll be in the lab, from 9 till through to lunch, and then on probably to 5, 6 o'clock. And then from there, I usually would go to the gym or else I'd have a session in the evening. So I'd be straight to the gym or for a session. And then generally it's back to the house to have dinner and then data analysis in the evening. So it's pretty busy, but I think that's a pretty typical day for me. Don't know if yours varies much.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm still sort of finding my feet. But I keep saying that. I've been on placement for 6 weeks now. So got back from Tokyo, had about a week, and then my course resumed again. So for me, actually, at the moment, with placements, the timetable can shift quite a lot. Sometimes we have things from sort of 8 a.m. till 7 p.m. chock-a-block each day. And sometimes we have evening shifts or night shifts. And actually, we won't have anything during the day, but we'll have stuff that ends really, really late in the evening, whether that's 11 p.m. or sort of 2 a.m., 4 a.m., whatever. So I'm finding I have to be quite opportunistic with my training. So it's kind of about making the most of being in the hospital when I'm there, making sure that I'm learning, whether that's on the ward round or speaking to patients or following one of the foundation doctors, practicing my skills there, looking stuff up and kind of researching on the hospital system, and kind of being really focused when I'm there. And then when I leave, if it's really late and I'm really tired, then I go to bed. But you know, if I actually have some time, it's about finding what fits into the time that I have. Kind of conversely, sometimes the night shifts work the best because often you have the day before and after empty because you're in the hospital from 6 p.m. till 4 a.m. or something really, really late. But it actually means that if I do have one of those, I have a day free to drive to Ely and go rowing and then do some weights. Whereas if I had a day of clinics, then trying to fit something in before an 8 a.m. start or a 7:45 start is quite difficult. So it might be just doing one thing in the evening. So I'm just kind of seeing what I can fit in and making sure that I'm enjoying it all. And it's going okay so far.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I find is it all goes downhill if I start to lose sleep.
Absolutely.
So it is about fitting it in, but not at the expense of sleep. So trying to keep kind of sleep and recovery going and then fitting everything in. I don't know, maybe you're good at it.
100% agree. I'm such a grandma when it comes to sleep. I swear I need at least 8 hours, if not 9, to feel human. And if I don't get that, I get very grumpy.
But that's one of the things, I think, isn't it, the science has been actually, you know, coming round to over the last, well, certainly increased the knowledge about how important sleep is. And everyone's different, but it's become a critical part of athlete preparation and tournament build-up or competition build-up. And the other one, which actually someone has just dropped a question, how do you manage with your nutrition? You know, because obviously you have to take it seriously, you have to know what you're doing, you get advice, but you've still got to look after yourselves as well in that respect. So you're living in sort of postgrad accommodation, you're living in college accommodation. Are you good at cooking and knowing what to cook and how to cook and all that kind of stuff? Does it come with the territory?
So I guess I'm really lucky with the nutritionists from UCAP that I at least have a bit of support. But honestly, I think it's just planning ahead. So I tend to do one big cook on a Sunday night and then eat the same thing for lunch and dinner until it runs out. My mum will be like, no, don't say this. Yeah, so, but basically I can cook a kind of, I guess, nutritionally complete meal.
Yeah.
And then it means that, you know, if I come in and, you know, I eat dinner at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night pretty regularly. But if I come in, I'm not saying, okay, now I have an hour of cooking to do before I eat, you know, it's in the fridge. I can heat it up in the microwave and eat it. So yeah, I think for me, I think it works really well when I plan ahead. If I don't plan ahead or if I don't do my weekly shop on a Sunday, everything just falls apart because I'm there and I'm like, oh, well, I've no food now. I'll cook half a dinner, you know, or it'll only work for tonight and things. So yeah, so it's planning ahead for me. And then I guess the other thing that I've really improved on in the last year has been trying to consume food immediately after training. And so kind of bringing snacks in my bag so that, you know, when I finish training, I'm immediately getting fuel and kind of getting the most out of my training. I probably wasn't doing that for quite a few years.
And is that kind of knowledge, but also comes with a bit of experience and realising what's important if you're going to reach that level?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of, to be honest, learning from the people around you and kind of, that's the cool thing about the Olympics is you literally get exposed to like the best athletes in the world and you're like, oh, well, why are they doing that? And, you know, maybe I should try this too. The one that's kind of funny at the moment is I've heard that a lot of rowers consume, I don't know if you do it, but baking soda. And I don't know if it's going to work for running, but it's things like that where you see someone's taking baking soda before they race and you're like, oh, will I try taking baking soda before I race?
Right, so we can't let that go. Come on, as a medic.
Wow, okay.
And a medic.
It's bi-carb supplementation. And allegedly, it might help buffer lactate for longer aerobic efforts. So the idea is that if you take it short term before you race, it could sort of make you sort of push at the red line for a bit longer or go past it for a bit longer. I haven't tried it, I'm sorry, so I don't have any experience with that. But I definitely agree with the prepping and making sure you're organised. I'm still figuring it out on the wards because in the hospital, you're often on your feet for a really long time and everyone's still wearing masks. So it's really hard to stay hydrated and stay eating stuff if you're on a shift for 6 hours. and then suddenly it's the end of the shift and you realise you haven't eaten or drunk anything. So yeah, it's about having snacks ready and food ready. And anyone who knows me knows that I love baking and I am an absolute sugar fiend. So it's a constant battle to try and make sure I actually eat properly.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your time. I think we'll leave it there. But just to say, from what we've talked about today, and especially the last bit, to be honest, which was just your busy lives and your incredible commitment, but is more than just being a good runner, a good rower, and actually when you're with your peers and you understand that, but it's about everything that goes on the 90% of the time you're not competing or you're not training, sort of thing. So I think that's really a good insight into how much it takes, what your knowledge is, and how you're still learning, aren't you? That's the other thing. I suppose you never stop learning, and your aim is to always improve. So that's been brilliant. Thank you so much indeed for your time. And I hope people who've been listening have enjoyed it as well, because it's been a real privilege for me to be able to sit here, share the stage with two such, and I use the word in the kind of intro, extraordinary people, student athletes, and I think hopefully you'd agree that's what we've heard from today. So thank you very much indeed, the pair of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.